everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of Ballpark Figures. I am your host, Shakeia Taylor. If things look a little weird, I am sitting in a different location than my apartment this time. Had a little work done, so the bookcase is no longer behind me for right now. I'm super excited to have this month's guest, Bianca Smith. Bianca became the first African American woman to serve as a professional baseball coach when she was hired by the Boston Red Sox in December 2020. She served as a minor league coach at the Red Sox complex in Fort Myers, Florida for 2 seasons, and now works in Japan as a sports exchange advisor with the JET program in Hokkaido. After graduating from Dartmouth College, where she played varsity softball and club baseball, Bianca pursued her dual JD and MBA at Case Western Reserve University, where she also worked as the director of baseball operations. Previously, she worked in baseball operations for the Texas Rangers and the Cincinnati Reds in amateur administration at MLB Commissioner's Office as an assistant baseball coach for the University of Dallas and as a youth baseball and softball coach for the Rangers, Reds, and Milwaukee Brewers Academies. Welcome, Bianca. You have done it all.
Thank you.
It's really good to see you. You told us a little bit ago before everyone joined that it's 8 something in the morning in Japan right now.
Yeah, now it's 9:04 in the morning for me.
How is it? How are you liking it? Tell us about your new job.
So I'm absolutely loving it here. One, I'm in a great spot. So yes, I'm in Hokkaido. So that's the largest northernmost island in Japan. So we actually get pretty decent weather. It's not really humid. It's not really hot. Right now it feels great. Great baseball weather. People are great. Actually, my very first day, I was welcomed with 5 kilos or about 11 pounds of rice. So I'm still eating through that right now. But yeah, no, the job is great. So as a sports exchange advisor, I'm pretty much just a baseball coach for the local elementary and middle school teams. So most of my days I will go into, I'm hired technically by the Board of Education for the town, which is Higashikawa. So I go in the afternoon, usually at around 1 o'clock. I'll be in the Board of Education for about 3 hours where I really don't have anything I have to do. So I end up studying Japanese, watching baseball. I'll watch like archive games and just pull up something to watch or coaching videos. And then I head to practice. We have practice on the weekdays from about 5 to 7, sometimes 5 to 8. And I have 5 to, I think like 11, 5 to 11 or 12-year-olds. So 6th grade and under for the elementary school, and then 7th to 9th grade for the middle school. And then weekends, I work 9 to 3 or 9 to 6 for practices, or we have games. It's very different from the US because I have way more time off. Like they actually limit us on how much we're allowed to work. So I'm required to have like this month 10 days off completely. So I don't go to every single practice, but it's been a lot of fun getting to see like the differences between the US and Japan, trying to get past the language barrier. The kids are really responsive. They've been great. I mean, the parents they help out way more than what I would expect. I think it would drive American coaches crazy, but they almost run practices sometimes. But yeah, so far it's been great. I think it's been about a month now that I've been here.
What are some of the differences that you see in American baseball culture and Japanese baseball culture? Just your quick take. You haven't been there too long.
So specifically on the youth side, it's still very much that if a coach tells a player to change something or to do something, there's no question. Like there's just complete respect there. If we tell them this is one of the things that I plan on talking to some of the coaches about. Like I said, we have practice from 9 to 6 sometimes on the weekends. That's not everybody. They split it up by grades, but you'll still have the first, second, and third graders practicing for 4 to 5 hours on a weekend. And you can see them getting tired, but they're not going to complain. They're not going to say anything. They clean up the field after. So the coaches just stand there and watch them drag everything. They rake everything. I mean, these are 5-year-olds getting brooms and rakes out and taking care of the field themselves. They help set up the field. Sometimes they start the practice themselves. If the coaches aren't there, there's always a captain or somebody who knows the drill, and they run, warm up, throwing, playing catch, things like that. And then at the very end, this one took me some getting used to. They all line up, they thank the field for pretty much the practice that we just had. And then they go to every single coach and every single parent and say thank you. And it's like, it's really quick. It's like in a line, but it took me some getting used to that. And even before and after, like when you enter the field, you you say please to the field, so onegaishimasu. And then when you leave the field, you thank them as well. You take your cap off, you bow to the field, arigato gozaimasu, and then you leave. So it's very like there's definitely different things that it's just ingrained in the Japanese culture and in these players, that not something I would change, but definitely something that you see that's different from the US. And then even some of the things that they work on, fielding, hitting. I mean, with hitting, every round they're working on bunting, which I had to explain to the coach here. I'm like, they asked me, oh, how do Americans bunt? I'm like, we don't. We just don't really bunt very often. Like, I know how to bunt, but that's mainly from softball. And so I did get to teach them a little bit of how we do bunt when we do, but even that's been different, just seeing them. Like, these are things like they're very focused on the fundamentals and making sure all of those things are right. If they don't do it right, they're going to do it again. They go after any ball that they miss. They even when you're hitting fungo to them, before you hit, they always say please right before you hit it to them. Like it's yeah, those are at least some of the differences I've seen in the last month.
Are there any other women coaches, and are you coaching any girls?
I have one girl that shows up occasionally. I think she's in second grade. She's not at every practice, but she is the only girl I have on the team. And there are no other women coaches with me, at least. I know that's still a pretty rare thing in Japan. At least most of the high schools, they'll have female managers, but even they are a lot of times not allowed on the field. So even that's become a new thing. I think this year with their biggest high school tournament, this was the first year they had a female manager even helping out on the field. And they still required all of them to wear helmets, which I thought was ridiculous, because if they're helping out on the field, they probably know what they're doing. But there are no other women coaches with me.
How'd you end up doing this particular job? I mean, this seems like a massive difference from what you were doing with the Red Sox.
So this is actually something I have wanted to do for over a decade that
Okay.
most people don't know, because I haven't really brought it up because it's such a rare position. I actually found out about this program when I was in college. And I can probably still pull it up. I had a list of goals when I decided I wanted to work in baseball. And one of my goals was to work in Japan in baseball. And it wasn't anything specific, like an area. I just wanted to work in Japan because, one, I love the culture, but I also knew how much they love baseball here. And it's just something I wanted to experience. So when I found this program, initially I found the assistant language teacher position, which is about 95% of these jobs through this program. And I started to apply thinking maybe I can get assigned to a high school, I could work with the baseball team. And then as I was applying, I saw the sports exchange advisor position and decided to wait until a baseball position opened up and try to do that specifically. Unfortunately, it only opened up once every 2 to 3 years. And it's very like there's like I said, most of the positions are assistant language teachers. I think there's about 4 to 5,000 people in this program in Japan. There are 8 sports exchange advisors out of all of those. So it's a very rare position. And then, so every time it opened up, I had a prior commitment. Actually, the last time this opened up, I had already signed with the Red Sox, so I couldn't apply for the job. So it just worked out that this position wasn't posted again until 3 months after I left the Red Sox. But I like to say it was meant to be, because if I had agreed to go back to the Red Sox, I still wouldn't have been able to do this job. So this was one of like my dream jobs that I wanted to do, because I knew this was a way for me to get to Japan, get to work in baseball, and hopefully continue not only learning, but like I love watching the professional teams here. I love watching the Japanese national team. So even making those connections over here in Japan. So that's, like I said, that this has been a goal of mine for like 11, 12 years. Like this was something I wanted to do Like I never set out to become a professional baseball coach. I'd always wanted to work in baseball in Japan.
Can you show everyone your jersey? I
Yes.
feel like they have to see it.
Oh, take there off. So this is the alternative Nippon Ham Fighters jersey, which is the local team. When I say local, they're actually about 2.5 hours away from here, but it's the only pro team in Hokkaido. And Otani and Darvish actually played on this team. So this is Otani's jersey. Like I said, this is the alternative one. I have the home one and the and actually his white and black national team jersey as well.
Okay, big Otani fan over there. I got you. I got you.
Have been for a while.
So how do you even have like these aspirations to go to Japan? Like I don't know. I've never even thought about it. Where'd that come from?
So that started when I was really young. I think it's kind of the same story with everybody who falls in love with the Japanese culture, at least Americans. We start with anime. So
Okay.
yeah, started watching anime when I was a preteen, started getting into manga, then started watching anime in Japanese, started learning like really basic phrases from reading subtitles, started watching Japanese dramas, started listening to the music. I think a third of my playlist is in Japanese. And then I just started learning the culture. I started researching it on my own, started learning the history. I actually have a book on Japanese myths and legends. And I mean, my parents are actually going to be traveling to Japan eventually, and they've been asking me, like, all right, what do we do in this situation? Because like this is something I've been wanting to go to Japan for years. I'd actually had the plan if I had taken the job with the Red Sox, I was actually going to come to Japan for 2 weeks in January anyway,
Mhm.
and visit during the off season. So this was going to happen. And eventually, it led me to Japanese baseball, started learning more about that history, started just watching games. And I'm very much I love defense. I love strategy. I love base running. And that is what Japanese baseball is. And that is why I love watching their team. I mean, sorry to America, but I've been rooting for Japan in the World Baseball Classic every time it plays. I was rooting for them this year or this past year. I've been rooting for them in the past, and I just love watching their fundamentals. I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to watch them play. So it was just a thing for me. If I knew if I was going to work in baseball, I had to get to Japan eventually.
Say, is this position, is it for a certain amount of months, for a certain amount of years, and then you'll return, or are you gone forever?
My parents think I'm gone forever. No, so this position, it's a year-to-year contract. So I'll actually find out in the next month or two if they want to recontract me, which when you think about it, it's kind of crazy because I only got here a month ago. So I have to
Mm-hmm.
decide in the next month or two if I want to stay another year. But minimum, I would be here until next August. If I agree to come back, they can sign me up to 3 years. And then if they really like me, they can sign me for 2 more years. So it's 5 years maximum through this program for any position. So we'll see what happens. I actually do want to stay in this position for at least 2 years, maybe three if I can afford it. And then I actually want to coach pro here in Japan for a while first before coming back to the States. And I do have reasons for that too. It's not just loving Japan and wanting to stay here, but it is more, again, learning the fundamentals, learning how they do things here, how they coach, and then figuring out a way to merge that. Also improving on my Japanese, which has been getting better. But then also when I come back to the States, I want to be able to be that person that helps Japanese players get used to the American culture and get used to the way things are done in America. Because we have a lot of Latin American coaches who can help with that, but we don't really have Asian coaches or Asian front office executives who truly understand the differences between the cultures and are able to help them not quite acclimate, because we don't want them to change, but at
Mm-hmm.
least become more comfortable, with the language barrier, with, the size of the ball is different. The size of the bases are different. Even the strike zone is different in Japan. So just those little things, little cultural differences as well. Having a coach who understands the differences and can speak the language is going to be really helpful for Japanese players coming over.
Can you Tell us a little bit about the bases and the ball and the strike zone because I know nothing about the differences.
So at least at the professional level, the baseball is slightly smaller than in the US. And the field is also just a little bit smaller. At least like the outfield, the dimensions are a little bit smaller. The big thing though is the strike zone is also smaller. So you'll see pitches that would be a strike in the US that is just a ball because it might even be like on the plate, but it's like on the black and they don't call that a strike. So now you've got Japanese players who are used to this really tiny strike zone and they go over to the US and this strike zone has expanded. And when a lot of the focus is, yes, they don't shy away from power, but a lot of the focus is to hit for contact. Mm-hmm. Now you've got strikes coming in that don't seem like strikes to them because that's what they're not used to. And that changes your approach. So that makes a big difference. And then even at the lower levels, this took me some getting used to. Elementary and middle school, at least, not only is the ball smaller, it's softer and has more give. So it's like squishier. So the first time I threw one, my first day, not my first day, it was like a week after, the elementary school head coach actually asked me to come to the field to play catch with him. And the first time I held a ball, I was like, this is like, I could almost grip the entire thing. And my hand's not that big. So I'm trying to throw it and the seams are not the same. Like there's slight seams, but it's definitely not as raised as a hard ball. So I'm trying to throw it and the first throw I get spikes, I just spiked it into the ground. And then the next one is like way over his head. Like it took me so long to get used to the weight and the size. I still can't throw 100% because I have no control right now. And I've been throwing this for about 3 weeks now. I even played in a game. The Higashikawa town hall team asked me to join their team. So the town has a team and I'm still getting used to it. And it's just like even hitting fungo has been different. Another difference that I've seen, at least with the fields, most fields don't have grass in the outfield, at least for elementary and middle school. The elementary school I'm working for, they have grass, but it's apparently a rare thing. Also, the space between home plate and the backstop is like twice as large as it is in the US. So any pass ball is automatically 2 bases. Wow. And that's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing I've had to talk to the coach about. I'm like, all right, if that's going to be the case, we need to work with your catchers because especially at this age where you're not throwing strikes all the time, balls are going to be spiked. They're going to be in the air. They're going to be all over the place. That's a lot of bases you're giving up because we're not really improving our catchers. Right. So I have, that is one thing that I have a goal of is helping with the catchers. And I have actually started working with some of them. And thankfully I don't have a car yet. I'm supposed to be getting it today. So I haven't been able to bring my catching gear to practice yet, but I'm going to start being able to bring it tomorrow and actually work with the catchers. So there's those little differences that you won't really think about until you think of the strategy behind the game and how it affects what's going to happen on the field. And so at least like with the baseball, the field, like that, those are definitely different things. The dirt is also different. It's a little bit harder. So especially with the type of ball that they use at the lower levels, it bounces more. And it's like a crazy bounce. You don't read that right, that's over your head and that's just going. And a lot of the fields, I've been to a couple of the elementary school games, they play on a regular size field, but with, 9-year-olds. So the outfield is moved in, but there's no like home run fence. So ball gets past the outfield, that's an in the park home run. Okay. And that actually happened. Thankfully, the team I'm working with is actually pretty good. But that happened in the second game I watched where we ended the game on 2 back-to-back in the park home runs. And they ended up winning 10-0 because they just ended the game. But it's because the ball just got past the outfielder and just kept rolling. So they just kept running. Oh my goodness. This is so interesting. Like you're learning about the intricacies of their baseball while also teaching them how to play baseball. Are you teaching any particular thing? Are you still a hitting coach or are you just a general base? Are you teaching everything at this point? I'm teaching everything. It depends on the day. I'll ask, the head coach will have their meeting, and see, that's also interesting with the respect aspect. The players will, like I said, they'll greet the field, they'll run over to the head coach, they circle around him in grade order. So you'll have sixth grade on one side going all the way to first grade. They take off their hat, they greet him, and then they listen. So he'll tell them what they're gonna do that day, and then he'll come up to me later and say either he wants me doing defense, he wants me doing hitting that day, working on bunting. So I've done hitting, I've done outfield, I've done infield, I've done catching. He's even asked me about pitching. And I'm like, I can scout pitchers. I could tell them what they're doing wrong. I haven't quite gotten to the point where I can fix it though. Just because I never really worked with pitchers. But thankfully with kids, it's mainly really just teaching them how to throw. So there have been a couple of things I've been able to help out with the pitchers too, but been doing base running. So yeah, I've touched everything at this point.
Is there any particular part of the game that you prefer to coach, or do you like being this person who can just do everything or teach everything?
I prefer defense and base running, and really just the strategy behind the game, which has been pretty cool because there've been some practices where we're just watching them scrimmage and I'm standing next to the head coach just pointing out little things that I see and say, hey, this is how we do it in the US. We might want to change this. And that's really all he wants. Like there are definitely practices where I'll ask him, do you want me working with, the lower grades doing hitting right now? Or do you want me with you right now watching the scrimmages? He's like, no, I want you here. And then we'll just talk. So I definitely prefer to coach that. But at the same time, like I do love having a hand in everything. And that was one of my goals as a coach for a while, was not becoming an expert in everything, having an expertise in a certain area, which for me is outfield, base running strategy, but still being able to help out in other areas in case they're needed. So it's nice knowing that I'm finally seeing, the results of all my just studying, just learning as much as I can. A year ago, I wouldn't have been able to help out with catching. But even when I was with the Red Sox, I made sure to ask questions with the catching coaches. I made sure to be at some of the catching practices so I can learn as much as I can so I could help out with whatever team I was with in the future. And it's starting to work out.
This is endlessly fascinating, honestly. But we were getting a lot of questions about your time in Japan. So I will get to you guys. Give me like 3 minutes. I want to ask some questions about your baseball life before Japan. You made history. You were the first Black woman to coach professional baseball. What's that feel like? What's that like?
It's hard to explain now. I think I've just gotten so used to hearing it that it's kind of like, yeah, I did that. But for me, it's just I got to coach baseball. Like it's kind of sad that it's 2023, and I mean that's still a pretty recent title. It was only 2 years ago, and there still aren't other Black women coaching. I mean, I know there aren't a lot of women coaching in general, but we've got 19 coaches in professional baseball right now, and not a single Black one. And that's because I left. So it's kind of disappointing that 2 years later, that is still kind of the title. And it's something I've embraced and I've accepted because I do understand the significance behind it. But at the same time, it's something that I want to get away from with the hopes that other Black women will join, and then we can kind of ignore it and we can focus on me just being a coach because that's really all I care about. Like I said, I never had any aspirations of coaching professional baseball. Like I was happy wherever I could. If I really cared, I would have taken the job with the Red Sox. I would have stayed with them. I just want to coach. And I wanted to be happy where I was coaching. I wanted to be happy in the environment and actually feel like I'm being of use and being valued. And yeah, I mean, I definitely understand the significance behind it. But if anything, I want to use it as like if anybody, if you haven't seen it yet, I have started a blog on my experiences here, and it's actually called Go Be the First, and it's off of one of the quotes that I said a couple of years ago, where I said, if you can't see it, then go be the first. And that's kind of how I want to use this title. It's not the focus of, yes, I'm the first Black woman. It's I became the first Black woman because I didn't see anybody else doing it. And I didn't care. I was going to
Right.
do it anyway. That's more what I want that title to be.
What's the web address for the blog? Can someone put it in the chat when she says it?
It's gobethefirst.com.
All right, we're all gonna start following your journey in
I
Japan,
appreciate
because
it.
that it's an incredible story. And I mentioned this to you before we joined everyone else. I also love that you worked for the Red Sox despite growing up a Yankee fan. So now that you are no longer in the Red Sox organization, are you back to your Yankee roots?
Yes and no. Um, so I'm really laughing because you can ask any of my family members. When I was younger, I used to say I would work in golf before I worked for the Red Sox.
Oh man.
I was so determined to not work for the Red Sox because I was such a diehard Yankees fan. And the longer I worked in baseball, the less fandom mattered because it became more of, it was less being a fan of a team and more a fan of the players, a fan of the coaches. I would start following teams because I was following players that changed teams. I was following coaches that changed teams. So yes, I'm back to being an outward Yankees fan. I can now be a little bit more proud about it. But I probably follow the Red Sox more than the Yankees right now. And that's not because of the fandom. It's just because I work with so many of the players.
Mhm.
Like at least probably about 85% of the minor league system now, I have worked with at some point. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the players. So I like being able to see how they're doing. I like seeing just the progress they're making. And then even the major league team, a couple of the major leaguers I got to meet and got to know. So I do still follow how they're doing. So it's kind of the same level at this point. I am more, yes, a fan of the Yankees just as an organization because of, just childhood. But I'm a fan of the Red Sox players and coaches. I'm still in touch with the coaches. I mean, there was a birthday like just yesterday, and I sent a text message. The coaches at the complex, some of them I'm still in touch with. So, and then I do that with the Reds. I follow the Reds players. I follow the coaches, the team, Rangers occasionally, and then Angels I follow as well. So it's yeah, it's less about the fandom and more just the connections that I've made in the game.
I'm gonna jump to the questions that people are posting, and keep them coming, you all, if you want to. Um, who is the most popular Japanese player among the kids?
Oh,
Uh,
Otani.
of course.
Sorry, I
Um,
didn't mean to cut you off, but
oh, you knew the. I mean, hey, the answer is the answer. We already answered that one. Do Japanese professional players come up through this program?
you talk the JET program
I believe, Marlene, are you asking about the JET program?
or just the team I'm coaching right now?
Let's see. She's there. Let me see if I can get an answer from her. Your team.
Ah, so I don't think there have been that I know of. I'd have to ask the coach. Hokkaido is not a very big baseball spot, honestly, even though the team I'm working with is actually really good. When I say really good, they have the All Japan tournament every year, and nearly every year they go. So this is a really good team, but I think that's more on the head coach. Like he's a baseball fanatic, and they've only recently become a powerhouse. Otherwise, even in just this area, the towns that I'm near, I think actually the high school in my town doesn't even really have a baseball team. So Hokkaido is just a tough spot to play baseball because it's like the northern US, but they don't have turf field up here. So even though they play baseball year round, most of your powerhouses are going to be further south where they have not only more resources, but they can face more competition. They've got better weather. So that's why most of your powerhouses are like in Tokyo and Osaka and like the bigger cities.
Do you have a favorite NPB team? Fighters, is that a byproduct of being located in Hokkaido now, a byproduct of Otani, or something else?
Yeah, definitely Otani. I picked the Fighters, yes, because of Otani. And then it just worked out that this job was located in Hokkaido. And so I got to be, well, 2.5 hours away from the nearest team, but still worth the trip. I've already gone to a game and I have tickets for another one at the end of the month.
Oh, that
The
sounds
tickets
so
here are so much cheaper than the US.
really.
Yes.
What's the average ticket cost that you're seeing?
I mean, it depends
Maybe
on where you're
$60.
sitting, but so the game that I went to this past weekend, I went with a couple of my colleagues, and they'd never been to a game before. And we actually sat in the cheering section, which was pretty cool. And it was, I'd say, like the fourth level. So yeah, definitely one of the higher up ones. And that was about was 3,000 yen. So I think with the exchange rate, a little over $20.
That's perfectly reasonable. 20
And
bucks to
the
catch a
food is
game?
cheaper. I got sushi, and this is expensive for Japan. The sushi was 13 bucks. But first of all, I was eating sushi at a baseball game.
Right.
And it was 13 bucks for an entire thing of sushi. It was like 8 pieces, which, again, seems kind of cheap. And then so the seat that I got for the game at the end of the month, I'm on the first base side, field level, and it was like 56 bucks. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. You get to watch great baseball, have a great time, and the environment is so much different from a US baseball game. At least that's how it looks, on
Oh,
TV.
so different. So I've been to, like I said, I've been to the Fighters game. My first 2 days in Japan, I was in Tokyo for an orientation. And I do know somebody who works for the Chiba Lotte Marines. So my roommate and I took the hour-and-a-half train trip out to Chiba. We only caught the last inning and a half, but even just being at that game, like if anybody's drunk, you can't tell. That's for sure. Like there's no rowdiness. There's when there's a foul ball, the only people who stand up are the ones who are in the immediate vicinity. And when I say immediate, I'm talking like 2 seats. Like almost nobody stands up. They just kind of wait for the ball to fall, and whoever's near it just gets it. Like there's no fighting for a foul ball. The cheering section is amazing. It was a little overwhelming being there for the first time with the Fighters game, but the cheers are up on the big screen. It's in Japanese, unfortunately, but if you can read kanji or Japanese, you'd be able to follow along. And some of them are pretty easy. And it's amazing watching this entire section get up. Like they've got trumpets, they've got flags, they've got drums, they've got the cheer section leader, and everybody in the stadium even though they have the cheer section, everybody in the stadium is doing the cheers. And it's just so positive. And then once your team isn't hitting, you sit down and you're quiet while the pitcher's pitching.
Love it.
If you've watched the World Baseball Classic, you've seen that too, where they're only cheering when their team is hitting. And it's such a different environment and it's so much fun.
I love it. I might have to come visit you. Um, what is the impact of the great success of Shohei Ohtani in Japan?
Way more people are following baseball, which is crazy to think because it already is like the national sport here. I think baseball and sumo wrestling are the biggest sports here, and baseball might actually be ahead of sumo now. But because of Otani, like I've actually talked to people in Tokyo who don't watch baseball, don't really care, but they see Otani as like a national hero. So it's been a very big difference, a very big influence. And just last night, I'm at practice and I was working with the hitting section for 2 hours. And I was trying to work with, so a lot of the kids will do, the arm barring, which you'll see with younger kids where they're trying to generate power. So they bring their arm all the way back and straighten it out. So I was trying to keep them with their arm bent until they actually make contact, and then trying to also teach them how to load in their back hip. And I immediately remembered I actually went to Astros Angels series back in June and I got video of Otani hitting. So as
Mhm.
soon as I saw one of the kids, they were just talking about, oh, this is what Otani does, and they're trying to mimic him. I pulled up the video and showed it to them, and as soon as they saw his number, they go, oh, Otani, and everybody starts coming over to watch the video. And so it's like, I mean, it's not just Otani either. really any of the Japanese players. I've had a lot of the kids coming up to me and asking, hey, do you know so and so? Do you know this person? Do you know this person? I'm like, I don't know any of them personally, but I know who you're talking about. And they get really excited that, like, I'll start naming Japanese players that I know. And they're kind of all looking at me like, really, how do you know that person? And so really any of the Japanese players, but Otani has definitely been the biggest influence.
What should elementary school age kids in the US learn from how elementary school age kids in Japan, I'm guessing, play baseball? And then any advice for youth baseball coaches in the US?
Definitely the fundamentals are one thing that I've noticed have been lacking in the US. And I think part of that is a byproduct of it's got to be a balance between repetition and fun. And I think the US has definitely gone towards that more, but I think now we're suffering kind of with the repetition. So we need to figure out a way how to get that repetition with, defense, even hitting, while still making it fun at the same time. And so like I said with the Japanese players, they will practice defense for an hour straight, which I don't necessarily agree with. But if you're going to do that, focus on the same thing, but do it different ways. So like I've introduced different games that we would do with the Red Sox, or I would do with my youth kids in the US, where we spend 30 minutes just doing 30 minutes just doing fungo and they're throwing to first. Like, all right, that's great. Now let's do ground ball knockout, where we're still focusing on just defense, but now there's a competitive aspect to it. So I think from what I've seen with like the US youth teams, what I've even done, and I've made this mistake before, where there's so much focus now on just trying to keep it entertaining that we will only do defense for like 10 minutes and they're done. And I don't think that's enough either. Like varying it too much doesn't really give them the repetition that they need. So extending it a little bit, but still having some kind of competitive aspect. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing I've seen, is just trying to find that balance between the two of them. And then just recognizing, I'll admit this one's a little hard, because I do like the fact that these kids just don't complain. I wish they would be a little bit more vocal sometimes when they are tired. So now it's on the coaches to recognize, okay, you need water, you need to stop, because otherwise they will just keep going. Like I had one, like 6-year-old telling me his shoulder hurt. And then it's right after he said that, he gets right back into the cage and starts hitting again. I'm like, okay, you just told me your shoulder hurt. Why are you still hitting? Because that's just what they're expected to do. But at the same time, I've seen this issue with, American kids. They get not even an injury. They just get sore even a teeny bit. And then they're just done. And then they pout and then they sit there, and like, that's not good enough either. Like we need, it's a mixture of how we run practices and just the culture in general between Japan and the US. It's just very different from how we even raise our kids.
Well, Susan wants to know, someone answered her in the chat, but she wanted to hear from you. How do Japanese prospects get into the pros was her question.
Oh, so biggest one, a lot of teams actually do follow the high school tournament. And I think I noticed, like, somebody had mentioned it, but the high school tournament in Japan is called Koshin. There's a spring one and a summer one. The summer one is the biggest one. It actually just finished up a few weeks ago. And there are pro teams who are following these players, because the ones who make it to Koshin, those are the ones who are going to end up being stars. Like all the Japanese players we see in the US, pretty much all of them have taken their team to Koshin and they've done really well. So that's one way that they get noticed. But a lot of Japanese players, they're going to go to NPB first. They're going to go to a Japanese team. And then from there, actually the game I went to with the Fighters, I did make a connection with one of their executives. I got to meet him right before the game. And he told me the pitcher that the Fighters were facing, they had 20 MLB teams there watching him. Like they had executives and scouts from multiple teams actually at that game watching him. So you've got, Pacific Rim scouting for MLB teams, but you also there are connections between MPB teams and MLB. And that's how they also get noticed. So technically they're not really prospects because they're already playing professional, but a lot of them are going to come through a professional team versus straight out of high school. And I'm not quite sure if that's a mix of the culture or that's just how it's done, where they're going to go to an MPB team first. I can certainly see why they would want to do that. There's a lot of good players here that just don't want to play in the US. I mean, like, they get paid good money here. They've got good contract. The cost of living is a lot cheaper here. And they don't have to worry about the language barrier or the culture differences. So why would they move?
Right.
So, but at least as far as being scouted and being seen, most of them, the really talented prospects, teams are already aware of them. They know of them through the tournament, through MPB teams, and just through scouting and through connections. Like, most MLB teams have scouts, or at least one person scouting the Pacific Rim. So not just Japan, they're scouting Taiwan, they're scouting South Korea, they're scouting China. So teams are able to see the prospects here.
The Red Sox have Yoshida, and he is having a nice year. Does he have a following in Japan?
Yes, he does. That was probably one of the first players that one of the players asked me if I knew him. And I'm trying to decide if I should even say this or not.
Okay.
So it's okay. If he gets upset, I'm sure I'll hear from the hitting coach. I actually did ask him to create kind of like a greeting video for the teams that I was working with here, just kind of like a good luck, work hard, stuff like that. And I wasn't sure if he would actually do it, but he did record a short video that I was able to show the players, and they were so excited. Like, so they know who he is, especially once they found out that I was with the Red Sox. Like, they're very aware. Most of these, like, there really aren't a lot of Japanese players in MLB. The ones who make it, like, kids know, especially if they're on the national team, and especially after this last WBC, they definitely know. They know who they are.
I bet your kids think that you are real cool, able to get videos from their heroes and just kind of be like, look who I got, you know? At least I would. If I were a small child, even here, if I were a small kid and someone like you showed me a video of someone I admired, I'd be like, okay, she's cool. Like, because it's not
that was part of my plan.
win the kids over, win the job for the next 5 years. You know, that's how it'll go. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your morning to do this with us. Really appreciate you doing this, Bianca. We are all rooting for you. We will be checking the blog. I know I will. And I'll definitely be bugging Lonnie about updates on you as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I hope everyone has a great rest of your month and upcoming postseason, right? Thanks, Bianca.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.